The band tells me they're already had enough rest and they're ready to continue going, so I'm going to be very brief. It's a pleasure to hear Rabbi Kaplan. We know that tonight, and it comes a yontif of Sukkot, and it doesn't stand by itself, but it comes in a flow of a whole month of Tishrei, of Yerech HaYesonim, and we go from Rosh Hashanah into the Aseret Yimei Tshuva and into Yom Kippur, and then eventually into this Yom Tov of Sukkot, of Zman Simchaseinu. And the Rambam says, even though that every Yom Tov has a Simcha, but Sukkot is a Simcha Gedoyla. What is this Simcha Gedoyla of Sukkot that was manifested in the Mikdash and here tonight as we do it with a Simchas Beis Hashoeva? So the Chazal tell us that after Yom Kippur, when the Yidden go through Yom Kippur, there's a tremendous dilemma and a quandary and a mystery that exists in the world. All of the world look at Yom Kippur and they see the Yidden come out of Yom Kippur, but they don't know what happened. They don't know Mi Notzach. Nobody knows. What was the psak? What was the gzeira? How did it come out? What happened to the Yidden on Yom Kippur? And they wait and they look and they try to figure out what happened, and they wait until the first day Sukkot. Comes the first day Sukkot, and they see that Yidden march through the streets with their arba minim, with the kli zayin, with their weaponry in a victory parade, and they know and they're able to say, Ne'imois biyamincha netzach. Now we know that Klal Yisrael was taka min atzeach. So I was thinking, we don't know. We don't know. We know. We don't know. How do we know? We're maimin be'emunah shleima that the Rabbi Shalom says on every Yom Kippur, Vayomer Hashem solachti kidvarecha ki vayom hazeh yechaper alechem lifnei Hashem titaru. We know that when the Kohen Gadol came out and they saw his face shining, kitzeis Hashem mish bigvurasoi. We know that Mitzvah Yom Kippur, Shuvu lachem lo yoleichem uveroisheichem elokeichem. How do we know that the Rebbeinu Shalom is mechaper every avoin? He's mitayir Klal Yisrael with slichem kapara. That's the avoid of Yom Kippur. So what do you mean we don't know? Who doesn't know? Somebody down the street doesn't know. Some guy doesn't know. Somebody who, what? L'maynaf Kamina, he knows, he doesn't know. We know. What's the suffix? What's the shayla? I was thinking, we've, in our history, recent history, current events, there's been a lot of revolutions that take place. There's a revolution. You have a revolution, there's an oppressive government, they hurt the people, they harm the people, they don't treat them properly, and a revolution of democracy arises, and the people rise up, they go into the square, and they stay there until they're able to overcome, and they're victorious. So is that a victory? When the new government comes in, could we say that they were minatzeach? We don't know. What's the new government going to do? How are they going to treat the people? Is it going to be a real democracy? Is there going to be compassion? Is there going to be chayin? Is there going to be an ahava? Is there going to be an achba? We don't know what's going to happen. Just because they won and they took over doesn't mean anything. And there could be tezelbazach over here. Then we go out from Yom Kippur and there's a slicha and there's a kapara, there's no shayla. And the Rebbeinu Shalom was mechaper us. And there's a ritzui b'simcha. But we don't know man notzach. We don't know what are we going to do with this newfound power, with this new ava, with this new relationship, with this new dveikis, with this new intimacy that we have with the Borei Olam. V'yomer Hashem salachti kidvarecha, v'yom chasunasa, v'yom simchas liboy. We have the luchas shniyos, but what are we going to do with it? A victory, a hallowed victory, an empty victory that we don't do anything with it, in the garnish vert. Now, when it comes the first day of Sukkot, and the Eden take their lulav and their esrig and their arba minim, and they come together, like Rabbi Kaplan said, and they go out into the streets and avodas habayra to v'lakachtem lachem, and they pledge their commitment and their allegiance to the Rebbeinu Shleilam to take this new ruach of tahira and use it in a positive way of bringing together Eden, of doing the avodas habayra. That's an etzachin. Now we say, it's not the kapara, but what you do with it, ne'imois biyamincha netzach. Everybody knows famous words from the Vilna Goyen that the yahrzeit is coming up on Yutes on tomorrow, not tomorrow, but the next day. And the Goyen said that the sukkah, which is a zeicha for the Anani HaKavod, are not for the original Anani HaKavod, because then we would make the Yom Tov in Nissen. But it's for the Anani HaKavod that came back. The guy knows that the Anani HaKavod disappeared with the Chet HaEgel, and then they came back, and the Yom Tov of Sukkot is for the Chazor of the Anani HaKavod. But if you look inside in the Goyin, in Shir Hashidim, on Perek Aleph, Pasuk Daled, the Goyin says, when did the Anani HaKavod come back? They didn't come back in Mitzvah Yom Kippur. Even though the Yemer Hashem Salachti Kivvarecha, even though the Luchei Shniyos, even though it was B'Yom Chasunosa, B'Yom Simchas Beis, but the Anani HaKavod still didn't come back. And the next day, Moshe called everybody together to build the Mishkan. And that was on Yud Aleph. And in Beis Yud Gimel was Babayka, they brought the Nedava. And on Yud Daled, they gave all the Nedavas to Betzalel. And he set up the Oilam that was going to build the Mishkan. And on Tesvav, when they began the Binyan HaMishkan, not when they started to build, to create a new Makom of Hashroyas Hashchina, Taka Mishkan, which is an Aroi, a Makom Aroi for the Hashroyas Hashchina, which would lead to the Makom Kva, to the Mikdash. Then the Anani HaKavod came back. That was an Etzachin. Now the Rebbeinu Shalom said they're right to have Mashchina, even though there was no Mishkan. But they're piling, they're doing what they have to do. That's the same thing. When we build the sukkah, we create this mishkan for ourselves, this makom aroi, we're zoicha to the Anani HaKavod, and that's the emes and etzachim. I also minig that Mitzvah Shabbos open over an uvda from tzaddikim. So I just want to share with the Olam. We know that the Yom Tov of Sukkot is a Yom Tov that has a lot of remozim to Lasid Lavoi. We read today the Haftarah of Gog Magoi. We talk about the Sukkah in the Gemara Navay Dezara, Lasid Lavoi, the Umas Olam will come, and the Rebbeinu Shalom is mavchen them with the Sukkah. We know that the Sukkah, the Gemara in Erechin tells us, B'shas the Simchas Beis Hashoeva, the Eden would say, we're not like the Friedrich generations that were Oivet Avodah Zarah, because we were Mevatel Avodah Zarah, like the Gemara in Erechin says, and that was Megan Alin Kischus HaSukkah. So it's an inyan of Bittul HaYetzer, which is also a binyan of Lasid Lavoi, and the waiting of Mashiach and Eliyahu Hanavi. So I want to share with you a story that I heard this past Adar, when I had the schus to spend the Shabbos in Mezhbish, and we met over there in Einikul of the Baal Shem Tov. And this Einikul sat with us, Malav Malka, and he told us the following story from his Zayda, and he said it over Mahamish. You never knew who Zayda was. I don't even know if he was a from a Yid, this fellow, but he came and he prayed with us, the Malav Malka, and he said over this Maisa from his Zayda. And he said that a Talmud of the Baal Shem Tov came to the Baal Shem Tov and said, Rebbe, you know, I know that you're Zeicha to have Gilui Eliyahu. From time to time, you come and you spend time with Eliyahu Hanavi. I'm a Getraya Talmud by you. I want to also be Zeicha to Amol meet with Eliyahu Hanavi. Rabbi Shem Tov said, no problem. Here's what I want you to do. It was before Rosh Hashanah. He said, I want you to go 10 kilometers away. There's a small village. I want you to spend Rosh Hashanah in that village, and there you'll be Zeicha for your Gilui Eliyahu. Valdik. He takes his zachin and he goes to that little village, and the Rebbe didn't tell him where he's going to find Eliyahu Hanavi, but he'll figure it out already. Comes to the shtot, he sets himself up, he gets to the kretschmi, he gets himself a room, he stays there, he's looking, he's going to this base medrash, that base medrash, where he's going to daven. Gets in the shuk, he meets, in the market, he meets a woman who comes over to him and says, has a chayin of Yid, my husband passed away a few months ago, and this is me and my two daughters, and we don't have any food to Rosh Hashanah, we don't have any chalas, we don't have any fish, we don't have any flesh, we have nothing, maybe you could help us. A woman needs something, he brought money with him, so he gave, and he bought her chalas and fish and flesh and everything, and all the simanim he brought for her, and she had everything. He spent the whole Rosh Hashanah in the shtetl, he's looking for Eliyahu Hanavi, and he doesn't find him anywhere. He comes back all dejected, he comes back to his Rebbe, and he says to the Baal Shem Tov, he says, I did everything you told me to do, and I didn't see Eliyahu Hanavi. The Rebbe tells him, the Baal Shem Tov tells him, go back for Sukkot. So he comes back for Sukkot, and he comes into the city, and as soon as he comes into the city, boom, he sees that woman, and her two daughters, and he hears that the older daughter says to the mother, she says, Mama, there's no was to essen, there's no chalas, there's no flesh, there's no fish, we have nothing to eat, we don't have a sukkah, what are we going to do, Mama? And the mother says, Taya the kid, don't worry, Do you remember on Rosh Hashanah that Eliyahu Hanavi came and he took care of us and he gave us chalas and he gave us fish and he gave us flesh? I'm sure that Eliyahu Hanavi is going to come again and he's going to give us what we need. Chassid understood that Medav Zich and Eliyahu, it's an inside job, Yidden. Eliyahu Hanavi is an inside job. You can't look for him in the outside, you have to find him in the inside. You should be Zaycha to find Eliyahu Hanavi and to enjoy this simcha, this Kabbalah simcha of Ne'imois B'yamincha Netzach, what we could accomplish. The simcha is not of what we have, but what we're going to do, what we're going to build, what we're going to create with that sukkah, with that Nani HaKavod, and with the Arba Minim. And thank you for listening, giving me a chance to be with you tonight in this community simcha.